there, this is Olivia making a more or less unscripted video again. And in the previous one, I gave you an overview of steps that you can take to develop the cacophony of ideas you might have in a collage. And for this one, I have my Borrow portfolio here with me to explain in more detail what I consider to be like the basics, or like the raw materials to make clothes, which are fabric and textiles and anything related to it, like colors, prints, textures, embroidery, like any sort of surface embellishment really. Maybe I'm too much of a textile nerd, but I find it funny when people come to me and they say that they want to make these really good clothes, but they don't show a lot of enthusiasm about textiles. It doesn't connect for me. But anyway, my advice always boils down to this one thing. If you have a teeny tiny spark of an idea in your head, I don't think you need to intellectualize it or start a whole PhD research about it. You just need to show it and like just find a way and do it. Because remember, one, these are studies. Everything can be polished after. Two, quality comes from quantity. So keep producing volumes and volumes of work. And if you're like spending, I don't know, 5 hours to make a really small embroidery and of something that you could have easily sourced at flea markets or something similar from like the trimming shop, then you really gotta stop and ask yourself, like you have to do this constantly with your work, like, am I actually doing good work and making progress but in a slower pace, or am I just trying to look busy? So yeah, now we get to the unscripted part of the video where I will be looking at my Borrow portfolio. And no, I'm not gonna go through this one because like this is the edited version. I don't want you thinking that my thought process was linear at all, because it was not. So let's go to this. I still have this folder where I kept a lot of the images that I used. So here there's a lot of, so there are pictures of kimonos, like standing like this. So they're like very, so kimonos don't look like this once you wear them, but because these are like sort of like product pictures and they put like a broomstick to take these pictures, they look like this, and I thought like this is really interesting. And then I have lots of pictures of Borrow. So Borrow is the sort of patchwork that they use when, like back in the day, textiles were considered extremely precious. So when, if you had like a teeny hole or maybe a bigger hole in your clothes, you would try to mend it. And then by mending and mending and mending it, sometimes in really rough ways, with time, some very interesting textiles, like textures and surfaces, were created. So I was really inspired by that. So yeah, from a picture like this, there's some very obvious things going on. The sort of fabric that I need to look for, so it's not exactly denim, is like a plain weave. I was gonna do something funny with my hand. A plain weave fabric, and in this sort of color, like blue, and everything is kind of distressed, so I have to like find some ways to destroy the fabrics a little bit. And there was this kind of like this tin 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 sort of stitch that's called sashiko. Sashiko is a sort of functional embroidery, and so yeah, there are like three things decided here: the color that I need to look for, threads to make this sashiko embroidery, and type of fabric that I should look for. Here you have like, I'm not saying that you need, like, for example, if you want to develop something like this, and it's still studies, you can either find fabric scraps from whatever. You can even find like from, I don't know, if you have old clothes, you can cut them and try to make a patchwork. But if I say that I want to do something with this sort of plaid, but I don't find it in the shop, then you can simply get a marker and paint on top of the fabric. So this, I wasn't researching like those like brocade, really like high-end kimonos. I was looking into like things that like into folkwear, or like what peasants would wear back in the day. So there was a lot of things with straw. From this I got this the hints of red, and this is already a collage, but you see, like, again, there's kind of the same idea. There's a certain roughness. So for my project, like, I didn't use straw. I used this kind of potato sack fabric, but the roughness of this already tells me that I'm not going to look for silk. If you can find a silk that in the end is going to look like that, great. Then you already have like a different direction for your projects. For mine, it was like, oh, I like this roughness. I also use like, once I started to explore like the colors and how I would connect it, all my brush strokes, like how I used color and paint, was also really rough. Well, there's like these pictures here that told a little bit more of the sort of volumes that I wanted. So I have, again, like another information like volume, like big shapes, big clothes. That paired with this sort of references, like this is a padded kimono. This is not exactly for wearing. This is some sort of sleeping bag. This already tells me that, okay, I need to find some materials that will create this sort of bow. That's why I looked for wadding. And oh, okay, here, this is like, there's a video where I showed this. This was the original. I didn't make things straight on this kind of sugar paper. And the sugar paper, again, it was suggested because it was a way to connect this sort of like roughness of my project, but like it was something that was added later. Originally, like the collages were done like this, and I even took the trouble of like, this is actually like, this is a real piece of fabric with real stitchings that I did. Since I was looking at borrow and distressed denim, the tutors at Fashion Folio told me to look into like the original denim wear that miners would use back in America back in the day. Again, you see this kind of like stitches. Somehow, like, I just thought of the idea of repetition. With this kind of idea of repetition, that's why I started to do like these collages like this. Again, this is not a design. This is not a design. This is not a design. I could go and try to make this in real life. It would be possible. It would be gigantic. It would take half of my living room, because now I live in a very small apartment. But just a collage like this is not an actual garment. And there's that temptation to go and be very specific about what you're trying to find, but you're not going to find this exact like prints. Something like this like tells me that it was paint that was dripping from this. And this part, this is where I got the idea of the wadding sticking out of my fabric samples. Yeah, this is more or less how I decided. This is another chance for me to tell you guys, be careful with collages, because there are so many ideas that could still be developed. Like, for example, the sort of like, well, the sort of like very Japanese like kimono sort of prints. There is the like this kind of gingham checkers things that could be explored. There are like some tiny flowers here. There's more patchwork. Like, yeah, there is always so much that you can do. So now, like, once you start looking for materials, I think you should be excited about that, because this is the part where you start to narrow down like your concept, like go deep on what it is that you can develop from this research. So going back to my little book, like the edited portfolio, this is like the working in desperation mode work, and like just me trying to going everywhere with my ideas and seeing where things would go. And this is the edited thing. So for each picture, you can see that I put not each picture, but almost like a lot of them, I have the research and then the textile sample that I made for it, and that starts to give a little bit more of, it starts to make your projects look real, not just like, oh, it's a school project, like it's something that could become close. And this was after I had researched and made my textiles, and then I narrowed down the sort of colors that this project would use. And yeah, inspired by, for example, this collage, I kind of thought that, like, how can I create like a gigantic square shoulder going on, and then two like triangles sticking out. So I tried to create this textile sample, and look at the back. This thing is rough. Just come on, just do it. Just do stuff, please. Yeah, this one you can also see, like, this is a very stiff fabric that I got. Is what they call like non-woven textile. So this is pretty much like paper, and it had an interesting color and an interesting texture, and it really like could be really stiff, especially when I pleated it. There were like these like bulky like apron-y shapes, and I thought, like, how can I make them like extra voluminous, and I made this little sample. I think if you look really close, you can see that I use sandpaper to create this sort of distressed denim look. I think this one even had like these stitches going around on the sides. This is because I was thinking like, oh, these could be like really big pockets. The part where I included about shirts, I'm not gonna go through it. Yeah, this sample was really nice. I don't know where it is. There are some kimonos, like a lot of this. This is probably like, I didn't know if they were stripes. I was going with the flow here. It's like I'm exploring like I have this kind of fabric in my hands, and I have the embroidery threads to do the stitches. So let me do, and wadding to do some sort of padding. So let me go with this instead of trying to think like, oh, now let me look for a striped fabric that looked like original kimono. I kept exploring. It was still on the same idea. The blue fabric that was not quite denim, and the stitches, the sashiko stitches, the wadding. There was this idea. This was like totally random. I found these styrofoam blocks that I used on the second stage. So I think this one is pretty much an afterthought, just to justify where I was getting these blocks from. Oh, here you have the potato sack that I frailed to make these sort of fringes because I was looking into, so these are not like actual fringes, this is like hay, but as I said, like I could have used actual hay, but what I found at the shop was the potato sack, and yeah, if I could make something interesting with potato sack that I already had, then why now think that it's okay, now let me plan a trip to the countryside to get some hay. And these are the samples that I used. So the light blue fringes I got from a shop in, if you're in London, you can go to like Gold Hawk Road, but this is really not expensive. And it has like some sort of beads that I removed, like that I cut off because like crystal beads have nothing to do with this one. And I painted over it. I used Speedball screen printing ink, the red one. And actually all the ink that I use here, I think it's Speedball for screen printing. But, you know, again, these are studies. You don't need to worry if things are machine washable or not. Just get some acrylic paints. You can even use markers and nail polish. So yeah, this is an example of how you could go to explore the textile, fabrics, and fabrication and colors. Oh, those are a lot of words. Like from your research. Of course, you don't have to go through the same routes. And this video has zero value if you don't try to go and do things on your own. Yeah, don't count on me just to give you inspiration and maybe like some emotional something. Yeah, go out and try to do things. If you are still feeling very lost, like you can always leave comments. I always reply. And if you need more like custom feedback, can't do this over YouTube, so consider getting a mentorship session with me. And yeah, I'll see you on the next video. Bye.